talk radio show that takes you along with host and life. The only talk radio show that takes you along with host and age explorer Rod Gontos on his continuing journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older. The Raad Life is brought to you this week by Your Home for a Lifetime, a company dedicated to empowering you to stay safely, independently, and comfortably in your own home. And now here is your host, Rad Gontos.
You know what? I am learning that there's only certain hours, enough hours in the day to do certain things, and I have more stuff to do than hours in the day.
You mean the Rad Life doesn't go on beyond 24 hours?
You know
I thought it had 30 hours in the day.
You know, it's funny that you should say that, because now that's almost become a reference. Somebody will now use the Rad Life as an adjective.
It is.
Yep, it's the Rad Life. Yep, it's the Rad Life.
Live in the Rad Life.
Live in the Rad Life, baby.
So, you know, 4 years later, we may be still struggling to find sponsors to pay the bills, but we have a hashtag that works, and it's now
and a bunch of crazy people that
tune in. So, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody who does tune in, because I know people do tune in. It's been an awesome experience. I get to meet great people every week. I actually get to meet great people and then invite them on the show to share the greatness.
We get to meet them through you.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, like I said, it's the Rad Life. But so one of the things that a lot of people that know about me is that I've been involved in a lot of nonprofits. And I kind of did that with a consciousness about 2003 or 2000, actually, when I moved back from Atlanta. And moved back and lived in
Our gain, Atlanta's loss.
Wow. Hold on, everybody. I gotta make my way over to Paul. Give him a hug there. I gotta give him a hug. No, Paul Roberts, man. You know, surprises me every once in a while. Didn't know you felt that way.
I just couldn't see the Rad Life working in Atlanta. I just don't see it there.
It worked for about 3 years, and then I got the heck out of there. But you know, all respect to Hotlanta, I did enjoy myself while I was there. But when I came back in 2000, I actually moved back to San Clemente. My folks lived there, and I made a conscious decision to actually get involved in the community. Like, I remember saying this to myself and to others. Like, you know, if you're going to live somewhere, then really live somewhere. If you're going to get engaged in the community, then get engaged in the community. Now, some people will tell you that I probably over-engaged in the community.
That's why you have no time in the day, right?
And probably, you know, there's a reason why I've been on the historical society board for 15 years in San Clemente. I'm getting about historical as the board itself.
Hey, we got a live one. Someone that's willing to do this for 15 years here.
Yeah, that was pretty much what happened. And in fact, I think I was informed later that I was basically elected to the board without being there. Right?
Happens all the time.
Yes. Well, we hope you're okay with it, because we already elected you on the board. We're printing the stationery, so you know you're pretty much on the hook. So 15 years later, I'm still there, but I've been involved in other nonprofits. A little shout out for the Rebuilding Together affiliates in Orange County.
Kasem Cares. You did some stuff with McDonald's House.
Carrie Kasem. We've been involved with the Ronald McDonald House. Shout out to Sherry, who runs Ronald McDonald in Long Beach, and also to Noel and Susan Kinney, who basically are instrumental in the Orange County one. The point is this: there's always more need than there is resources available. So nonprofits do an amazing job filling in where people fall through the cracks. People that are not necessarily maybe lined up for institutionalized support. There are people that are always in need. It could be temporary need, it could be longer term need, it could be medical, it could be, you know, we've had Project Independence on here recently, you know, which is over 40 years they've been around, basically servicing people with special needs, you know, providing working opportunity. These are people that I have found, when it comes to nonprofits, that are genuinely big-hearted and really servant's heart is the term. And they do this day in and day out.
They ain't doing it for the money, that's for sure.
They ain't doing it for the money. But the money is very much a part of it. And, you know, you look and you will see, you know, pretty much everybody will do a golf tournament. Everybody will do a gala. all these standard kind of things for fundraising. Because the other thing I find
Silent auction.
Another thing I find out, being a board member on multiple boards, is that all these boards tend to also struggle with the same things. Regardless of their size, they struggle to one degree or varying degrees with the same things. And one of them is grant writing. One of them is fundraising. Mm-hmm. And what kinds of fundraising? There's multiple types of fundraising, right? And so with that in mind, I want to welcome my guest today because Suzanne and I started talking about this, and it was interesting. We all want to help these organizations do better and fulfill their mission more, right? But one thing that has happened is that also the nature of nonprofits out there today versus, let's say, 10 years ago, the fundraising and the resource gathering and the funding has changed dramatically, right? So with that, Suzanne, please introduce yourself to the very few people that are probably listening.
You told me millions.
Millions.
No, that was Paul. He's been hitting the sauce a little bit.
Oh, man.
And not sharing, mind you. But, introduce yourself and give people a little bit of background because you have an interesting background as well to what you do today and how you got here.
Yes.
So I'm not going to ruin the surprise. You tell people.
Okay. Well, my name is Suzanne Krainock, and I am the founder of Inspired Benefit Auctions. I've been a professional benefit auction specialist for about 8 years. So I help nonprofits and charities with strategic planning for fundraising to help lots of different people in need and organizations in need. So I am the benefit auctioneer. I'm the one on stage, and I'm the one consulting with them.
Give us some of the auction voice here. Hey, go into 3, 4, 5, 5, maybe 1, 3, 4, 5, 2 in the back of the
You're hired. You're hired.
What did I say to you? Yeah, he's been hitting the sauce.
Yes.
Okay, no more liquid lunches for you. Okay. But the interesting thing for a lot of people is like, well, we show up at this gala, we show up at this event, the organization puts on this thing, right? And then the auctioneer is just
with
there.
With their two-people staff.
Yeah,
right.
with their two-person staff. But the auctioneer basically is just there to basically MC the event. I personally know, and you and I basically have common people that we know, right?
Yes, yes.
We know how much goes into this.
A lot.
And how early it gets basically when you say strategically basically setting up for the success of the event, right? Because there's certain goals and targets usually.
Correct. Yes.
Right?
So typically I'm working with different organizations from a year before the event even starts.
Wow.
So we're really putting a lot of thought and effort into making that night a really inspiring mission moment to really educate the community and also get the community to wrap their hearts around what this organization is doing. And that just doesn't happen with somebody standing on stage and selling items. This is a partnership. It's a advocacy. That's what I do. I advocate for each and every one of my nonprofits that I work with. So I'm their representation while I'm on stage. I'm not just selling a great trip to Aruba or an Angels package. So
can you get us an Angels package?
I could try.
Okay.
I could try. I'll get with my people.
Before or after they move to Long Beach?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So I would ask the question Rad's thinking, and he always wants to ask, how the heck did you get into this? Talk about a miss.
And it's not you didn't like wake up one morning and say this is all I've been doing in my life. You came from something else.
I did. I actually started as a marriage and family therapist. So
I see the direct connection.
Yeah, totally.
No more.
Actually, anybody who's been to any of these events realizes that about 3 drinks in, you pretty much have to be an auctioneer / therapist with a mic in your hand.
Yes.
Okay, you take the couch, you take the sofa, you take this.
So I was in graduate school and I was training to become a marriage and family therapist. But while I was going to school, I needed extra money, and I always loved entertaining. And when I was a young girl, I wanted to be an actress and knew I wasn't going to be discovered. So while in graduate school, I also went to clown college and became a professional clown.
Of course. Why not? I see the connection.
Actually,
oh my God!
Without outing who it is that I'm thinking about, but and I know who I'm talking about, right? I think those characteristics actually probably are the foundation.
There's a lot of clowns in this
Well,
business. Okay.
Yeah, very much so. Well, it's not just auctioneering. We call it auctiontainment. So we're up there and we're entertaining. So it did come in handy as I became...
Hi, Zach.
Yes.
You got to stop for 1 second and give us
Isaac
30
Crook.
seconds on professional clown school. 'Cause you're the first person in my whole life that I ever knew
I
that
know,
went to
there's
professional
actually
clown
a clown
school.
school. And in fact, when I asked my parents if I can go to clown college, they said, well, as long as you don't marry the tilt-a-whirl man, go right ahead. So I did and learned
there's certain
all kinds
standards.
of things. Yes.
There's things you don't even do in clown school.
Where is it? What'd you learn?
You know, it was, you learn clown magic. So it's that silly clown magic, how to put on, you know, the
illusion.
makeup, the
Similar to jazz hands.
entertaining.
You
Yes,
know,
it's very similar to jazz hands. But there is a certain method, if you will, to clowning around. There's a method. Yes.
How long is clown school? A day? A
No,
year?
it was about a year. It was
Wow.
about a year, and it was
So
a
they're
lot of fun.
upper level classes.
Upper
there?
level
Sure.
graduate
Yeah,
clowns.
you have
and
to
there's-
go up. I've got a PhD in clown school. Yes.
Wow.
So, but so that I
Okay,
did
so
a lot
let
of
me-
parties and
so-
different things.
So let me tell you something. He doesn't remember because he's old. Okay?
Yes.
And he's God knows what. He's he's the poster child baby boomer.
That's
in this,
right.
in this
Who
room.
knows what's
But-
been in my body?
but basically, the funny thing about this show is we've actually had clowns on here before.
We
Paul.
have?
Yes.
Who?
Rufus Tank. I can't remember his last name. Rufus. Sorry, I apologize. But Rufus was in here, and there's somebody else that was in here, and they basically came in, and they both have a improv and clown component.
Improv. We've had some people
Yes.
do improv. I've never actually had anybody that learns to put the...
No, they didn't put anything on their face and a squeezy nose.
Can I ask
No,
a
they
question
didn't
I've
do that.
always heard, and I never knew if this is true? Every clown, when they become somehow a professional clown, not just me putting makeup on and going to a kid's party and saying, "Hey kids, it's Uncle Paul."
It's Uncle Paul.
That's a little frightening.
We have to
Paul.
work
That's
on
a little-
it.
it is. I didn't want to go too far into that one here.
Yeah, are you coming out of a wide van?
Yeah, right. But the clowns somehow register their face, and that each one is supposed to be unique, and that there's a clown registry or
Are
something.
you trying to, in a very subtle way, ask if Suzanne actually has a registered clown?
I don't. But my
Is that
name
true?
was Sneakers. I was Sneakers the clown, and I did not register my face.
But isn't that true that there is some sort of registry that you...
I believe you are correct. Yes.
So
There we go,
there's
see?
the registry of clowns.
There's a registry. Yes.
Yeah.
Because you all want to look different. They're supposed to be a
Well,
special...
if you're going to build a wall across the border, you definitely need to register for clowns.
Yeah, well,
I mean, come on, let's
government
get
doesn't have enough
priorities
to
right.
do, right, yeah.
There's all these clowns running around without being identified
Yeah.
and trackable.
It could be chaos.
That's chaos in this country. So that's awesome. So you what then causes you to, I'm assuming, not continue down the path
So yes,
Quit clowning around.
exactly.
academically
I was a clown
and
yeah.
decide to clown around?
So I was, after I graduated from with my master's in counseling, I was interning and working on hours to become a licensed therapist.
And where was this, in Southern California?
It was
or-
in Southern
okay.
California.
Where'd you go to school?
Cal State Fullerton.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, undergrad and graduate, Cal State Fullerton.
She went to Chuckles the Clown School.
As well as Chuckles the
Behave
Clown
yourself
School.
and sit quietly. Okay.
I had an opportunity to teach first grade, and at that time you didn't. It was for a Catholic school, and
Yeah.
at that time you didn't need a credential to teach in a Catholic school. And the principal really admired the fact that I had a master's degree and felt that that was more beneficial in the classroom than a teaching credential.
Mm-hmm.
So I started teaching first grade and became a teacher for about 10 years, and finally came to a crossroad in my life where I just felt like there was more I wanted to do with my life and with my talents. And I happened to be the auction chair at my children's school where I was teaching, and I decided that I needed to resign. I had nothing to fall back on. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew that I couldn't continue teaching if my heart wasn't in it anymore. I didn't feel
And
like
how long
that
did
was
you teach for?
about 10 years.
Oh, it's-
Yeah.
So don't tell.
So, being the auction chair at the school, I had a friend that was a very good auctioneer, and I told him that I resigned, and he said, "Well, what do you want to do with your life?" And I said, "I don't know, but if there's a microphone and traveling and hanging out with people involved, I'm all in. So he said, he's kind of looking at me like, well, I'm an auctioneer. Why don't you do that? And I said, well, I'm a girl. I can't be an auctioneer.
Yeah, they're all guys.
And he looked at me and he said, you know, one of the best auctioneers I know is a female, and you would be amazing. And the rest is history, really. I started following him around and really found my passion. And when you take a teacher, a clown, and a marriage and family therapist and put them all together, you end up with a benefit auctioneer.
I see that.
That is a pretty powerful combination, I have to
It
say.
really is. Yeah.
Because at one point in the evening, they turn into children. At another point in the evening, they're at each other's throats.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? And all the time, you're trying to get money from them.
Right.
And entertain them.
And
right.
entertain them.
Yeah.
Did you have to learn the voice? Do you really do the voice? The
How do you prepare for
So
that?
a lot of people go to auction school and learn the chant.
that what they call
I
it?
actually
Okay.
did not go to auction school. I'm one of the few that didn't go to auction school to learn the chant, because a benefit auctioneer doesn't really have the chant that you are normally familiar with automobile auctioneers or real estate or cattle. A benefit auctioneer, as I said, is more of an auctiontainer, and they have a slower cadence. $200 bid, now $3, now $3, now $300, now $4. Would you bid 4? Would have bid 4? Would have bid 4? Now 5. So it's more of a slower. You want to engage people, and you don't want to freak them out. So I actually went and received my benefit auction specialist designation. It's a very highly specialized designation. Only about
Where
200
in the
people.
world do you get that? I don't even know where there's a clown school. Now there's another school for auctioneering.
There's a
Yes.
mountain in Oregon.
Yeah, right,
Yes.
exactly.
That
Climb.
is fogged in with clouds all
Yes.
year
You
round.
find it,
you
you
climb.
climb, right.
Yeah.
It's actually through the National Auctioneers Association. So
Or
they
that,
provide
yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of designations. So only less than 200 people in the world have this
Wow.
designation. So we're highly skilled and trained in specifically benefit auctions. So we learn the latest trends, the latest things that work. We've got a cavalry of support of other auctioneers around the world that we
And do you
work with.
plan the auction, or do you just show up and say, "What do you got? Okay, here we go,
Well, no,
folks."
she just said that she's working with these organizations.
I mean,
a
you
year in
plan what you're going
advance.
to auction off or
yes,
something?
so we work with the organization together to
Yeah.
come up with the best items, the timeline, your mission moment. So all of
mission
that is
moment.
very...
What's the mission moment?
So your mission moment is actually the most important
Mm-hmm.
portion of any kind of gala fundraising event. So that's the moment where you're pulling at the heartstrings
Mm-hmm.
and getting the community to really come together and understand all the wonderful work you're doing in the community and how they can help and how they could take action and give and hopefully continue to give and be longtime donors of that.
Sometimes there's a video that's played. Sometimes
Correct.
it's a personal story share.
Correct.
Yeah, it might be a combination. Yeah, and there are organizations that do that very well. I think it's interesting because I think part of the pitch always, and I think this is also part of what you guys do very well, is you got to know your audience. You got to know who's coming, what kind of because if I'm correct here is you actually even select some of the items that from what they do get that is donated or whatever. What items are the ones
What
that
will
you
do
want to
well.
highlight and what are going to do well and what
Right.
maybe should basically may shouldn't be in a live auction but should be transitioned to a silent auction. You get involved in all of that sort of
Absolutely.
organizational component to the event success, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one thing I want to take a minute here because you keep referring to benefit auctioneer, and then you say, well, there's not a lot of benefit auctioneers. So take a minute and explain to people the difference of what is
Regular
a benefit
auctioneer
and a
versus-
regular auctioneer.
Well, when I say a benefit auctioneer specialist, what happens is a lot of organizations will want to save money, and they'll get their local anchorman or weatherman or maybe even a
Some celebrity.
Yeah.
celebrity of
Somebody,
some
yeah.
sort.
Right.
That just because they have this notoriety that they could stand in front of people and get them to give from their heart, whether it be for a live auction item, a transactional thing, or to wrap their heart around the mission. A benefit auctioneer specialist is somebody that's specifically trained in the psychology behind giving and donors and events.
So share some of that. You give us like a little.
You want the
thing.
secret sauce here today?
sauce.
I'm not going to tell you the
I
secret
want a little
sauce.
teaser. I want a little teaser.
What exactly do you mean?
Like something that we don't know as audience attendees that is maybe being taken in, being evaluated, and basically factoring into how you are basically running that event? Like,
And
what
are
is
none of these
something-
techniques
So you're
or
standing-
tricks or just understanding?
I think it's more of an understanding. You know, there's a lot of science and psychology behind having an event. A timeline is crucial. When you have certain things during your event is crucial. For example, we're finding out more and more that silent auctions aren't working as much anymore. There's a lot of work that goes into not a big rate on return. We're finding more and more people are even getting rid of the live auction component of a benefit auction and focusing solely on that mission moment, the fund a need, the paddle raise, the fund a scholar moment, because that's really the whole reason why you're there. It's the most critical and inspiring portion of the night. So many organizations are just having that mission moment, that fund a need, where you're raising your paddle at different levels where everybody can give at a level that's comfortable for them or a level that speaks to their heart.
You know, you talk about silent auctions. I just went to an event a couple weekends ago, and they had a silent auction. There was some cool stuff in there, the typical stuff, dinner for two,
Sure.
nights out, whatnot. And I felt the same thing. It was kind of a flop because everybody rushes and says, "Gee, I'm going to get Angels tickets for $10."
Right.
And then once it goes up to something realistic, you know, it goes up 2-3 times and everybody just stops.
Right.
And the only people that are really bidding are the
Well,
people that are already committed and say, "All right, here, I was going to give you $1,000 anyway. I'll give you $500."
Well, and you see some organizations basically doing stuff in advance of the event, where they'll put items on online or things where you can bid on, and then there's some stuff that basically doesn't get sold in silent auction, and they continue to carry it over where people can still buy it. Basically,
I've never seen that.
Yeah. There's been changes for sure. I was going to ask, have you seen, because I think people's attention span, their time availability, we started joking off at the beginning of the show about not having enough time, but the time availability, people, does that start to factor into today's planning for these events?
Absolutely. Well, I think the biggest thing that we're learning is that, especially with millennials don't want things. They want experiences, and they really want to wrap their hearts around a couple of charities. Years and years ago, people would wrap their heart around one charity, and they would give a whole bunch of money to this one charity, and they would give for years and years and years.
Their go-to
Yes.
for donating.
Quite often they had a
Now-
connection to it. Their mother died of
Right,
cancer or something.
exactly. Now we're finding, especially with the influx of millennials coming up, and they don't want items, they don't want things. So silent auction is not making as much a higher rate on return as it used to. They want to have experiences, and that happens more in a live auction where you can do things that you can't necessarily purchase.
Yeah.
So fun experiences, life experiences, but they do want to give to a few organizations. So it's really important that donors now understand how their gift impacts your organization.
You have to connect the dots for them.
They
very
really
clearly.
want to know what is it exactly that they're doing, whose life are they saving, and how did it change somebody's life. So those types of things are really important to talk about as you're planning this event, and make sure that messaging is throughout the night.
I think most charities do a lousy job of that. Give, big need, feel bad, give, pass the bucket, pass it again, let's do it 3 more times, and then they take the money and say thank you, and I never hear from them again until it's time for more money.
Well, there's no quantifiable result reporting back with
No,
results.
or any connection between what my
Exactly.
$10 did.
And part of it is because, again, these organizations are challenged in meeting their mission. I
Yes.
mean, they are overwhelmed. Let's be very clear. Most of them are very overwhelmed by what they have taken on as a mission, and with resources they have available. They may be a large organization; they're still challenged.
Absolutely.
In meeting what they are basically have set themselves for goals. I'm also reminded by what I've seen, and I'm sure all of us have seen, is a lot of people that basically ask for donations on things like Facebook for their birthday, for example.
Yes.
So it's interesting how the form of giving has changed, and the venues by which to give have changed, right? So if I basically have 4 or 5 friends of mine basically over the course of, let's say, a year asking for donations to a particular nonprofit, and I know that particular person has an affinity to that particular nonprofit, or maybe is sitting on a board.
Right.
Like I've done this for 2 birthdays in a row. I sit on a board in Anaheim for for an organization called Arab American Civic Council, and I basically asked people to donate for that for my birthday, and I think we generated something like $1,500 to $2,000 over the last 2 years, just
great.
simply on Facebook
Yep.
donations. So if I'm doing that and I'm feeling like I am giving, but I'm giving it through that format, then do I still feel the need to maybe go to a gala?
Right.
So me as a nonprofit now, do I have to understand that I have to up my game or maybe reinvent the way that I ask?
But without getting them out to physically interact with you, how do you create a personal, deep connection with it?
Well, you need to
Yeah.
understand who your donors are.
Exactly.
You need to understand
And
why they
that's
give.
my point. Yeah.
What is their connection to your organization? What drew them in to begin with? And if you don't understand who's in that room, if you don't understand your donors, you're never going to be successful. Number one, keeping them, or being able to find the right way to ask.
These events
Yeah.
that we're talking about that everybody does, I mean, I remember a couple of years ago where everybody started to walk away from the golf tournaments because these events are actually costly.
Very
Yeah, some of them
They are-
lose
they-
money.
they-
Oh my
they-
God,
they-
the worst
they-
possible scenario.
There's a cost to them. There is budgets and the numbers, you have to basically pull all the stops. Sometimes the sense is I got to pull all the stops. I got to make this thing shine in order to basically be able to collect the money. And then you sit and you go, okay, so let's factor in the volunteer hours and put a price tag on those just for the heck of it, right? Because that's the so to speak a carryover.
And how about the hard costs?
And then the hard costs, and then you come back and you go, oh, we generated X number of dollars. But if you generated X number of dollars and you basically cost 80% of X, then the question is, would there have been a more efficient way to get donations or collect money for fundraising for the organization?
In other words, quit clowning around and get the benefit, right?
Well, no, I'm just bringing that out because a lot of times these organizations don't have. It's like we've done this before. It's worked.
Sure.
We're going to do it again. And so, when I was talking to you, Suzanne, the thing that appealed to me is that you actually were willing to go there with these organizations. Like, you guys going to put on this event. You've been doing it for the last 10 years. Let's sort of critically look at what has worked and what has not worked, and what
Correct.
can we do better. Right? Maybe it isn't a sit-down dinner. Maybe it's a pass and drinks. Maybe it's a stand-up, at a cocktail hour. Maybe it's an afternoon thing versus an evening. Maybe it's a smaller venue twice a year versus a large venue once a year or something like that. I mean, the interesting thing is I think right now these organizations all are facing a different reality.
Sure.
So how how long you've been doing this? 8 years.
About 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how have you seen it change? To
Well,
where
yes, I think I was also, add to my list of job titles.
You didn't do more things now.
Yes,
Come on. Come on.
I was a chief development officer for a national nonprofit, so I've been on that end of this
You've been on the
spectrum.
inside.
Yes,
Yeah, which is
inside,
invaluable experience.
Which is very stressful. What I think is the most important thing to remember, that nonprofits need to remember when they're putting on whatever kind of event it is, they need to get away from the attitude that it's a transactional event and start thinking more of their events like a philanthropic event. So these events are to cultivate new donors. They are to bridge that gap between somebody that knows nothing about your organization to wrapping their heart. That event is just the first step in a long-time relationship with the people
that you're building.
Right. And if you look at it more as a philanthropic event rather than somebody's going to give you money and get something in return, you will have a much better result.
Well, and the nature of the event now takes a different
It does.
characteristics, right? Because now it's a call it dating. It's a
Yes.
building of a relationship. It's not a culmination necessarily.
Correct.
You might have some of that happening, but and it's very smart because what I have also noticed with nonprofits, especially in smaller knit communities, is that all the nonprofits. I mean, the joke in San Clemente for me is that between every nonprofit and nonprofit is a nonprofit, right? and it almost seems, and I'm not picking on San Clemente, I think this is a common everywhere, is that people go dip into the same pools, all of them.
Yep.
And so what happens when these established deep pockets, philanthropical personalities that are in your community, what happens when those, heaven forbid, they pass away, or they move, or they relocate, and you have not actually taken the time, to your
Right.
point, of cultivating,
stewarding
new relationships.
Right.
No, it's brilliant because it's absolutely
Yeah.
true, and I don't know until you present it right now. I don't know that I had connected the dots, but it makes perfect sense.
Right.
You're basically developing a new clientele,
Yes.
if you will.
And
Each-
what I like what you're saying is it turns me from being a checkbook into a connection.
Right.
And too often I've seen them. I'll give you a quick example. My late aunt didn't have much money, but God bless her, she donated $5, $10 to everything that
Yep.
came along. And all it did is provide an avalanche of more people. She was on the sucker list, as my dad used to call it. And sometimes you can feel that way, like, really, I gave you $5, and now you're going to bombard me every day to get another $5? You don't care about me. You just, I'm just an opening, and you're going to try and exploit it until I say quit. Stop sending me stuff.
So, okay. So let's give people the website for your company.
InspiredBenefitAuctions.com.
Okay.
Are there uninspired benefit auctions? Are there?
You know what? There could be.
There
but I'm
probably are
telling
a lot
you,
of bad ones
We're
out
inspired.
Are you inspired, Paul?
I'm inspired by this story because I think it's a different approach. Too many charities are all chasing a handful of people, and they all got a desperate story and a desperate need. But after a while, you turn them off.
Well, and I think you made a point, and I think the nature of everything from even political fundraising to otherwise, right?
Same thing.
We are now moving into an area where there's a lot of stuff that is collected in smaller donations. So as an organization, if you basically are accustomed to basically sending out a letter of thanks only to people with a certain number and higher, then you
Right.
basically, to Suzanne's point, I think I can make this statement, is that you're not basically cultivating that small donor today that may actually be a larger donor tomorrow.
Exactly.
Because you don't have it built into your culture to actually recognize that this is a relationship building thing that you're doing. The other thing you and I talked about, and I wonder if you can take a few minutes and talk about this, is in your role coming in to an organization to help them with an event, especially with the fact that you are engaged in this thing a year in advance, okay? Because how much of it do you feel is done well or not done well when it comes to the promotion of that event, to the actually putting out the word on that event?
Oh,
to
they're
actually,
horrible.
Because I tend to see something come in like, oh, we got to put the word out for people to buy tickets, and it's like, 60 days in advance or 30 days in advance. But if you're working with them from a year in advance, okay, how do you think a lot of these organizations actually do a good job or a bad job? Could they do a better job of actually engaging and building the connection and educating and informing prior to the fact that tickets have become available?
Sure. I think it's difficult. I think they want to, but I think it could be a budgetary reasons that they don't have the resources to get the word out. I think coming on a program like this would be an incredible opportunity for organizations to
And we've had some
advertise
people come in and do that.
and
But again,
talk
it's
about the
too
organization.
close to the event usually.
But they need to do it, yes,
That's the
months
key.
and months in advance.
Can I tell you, as
Yeah.
I sit in this chair, we have 20-some shows we produce out of the station. I get bombarded every week with, can you push this event? Can we do an interview in the event? I say, when is it? It's tomorrow. It's too late.
Yeah.
They're always sending us the press release and the invitation. Rad and I were invited to an event on last Sunday,
Yeah.
and they're sending it to me on Friday afternoon saying, do you want to come? And by the time I reply to them, they don't reply back. It's like, you got to get to me and the rest of the world much sooner.
But so the reason I asked that question is because I would think that you're coming in to do an event. There's a date stamp on that event. However, there's a component to every one of these organizations that really should be an ongoing educational component.
Sure.
To inform them with the mission, to outreach to the community. And I understand that a lot of these nonprofits, they are saddled with minimal resources to what the size of their mission is usually. They're basically trying to make priorities where money goes or where resources go. And there's a certain amount of reactiveness versus proactiveness to how they operate, because that's just the nature of nonprofits. And I wonder if any of that stuff isn't really hurting their sustainability as an organization. Because I was on a board for an organization that's been around for 21 years. And we folded. We didn't survive the downturn. And that's not an isolated
Because you didn't
story.
have connections. You just had a list of you had
No,
prospects.
no, we did. What we didn't do is we did not Deal with the organization from a sustainable model,
Oh, I see.
a legacy model.
Right.
Because a lot of stuff, like I started off saying, I've been on the board for 15 years of the Historical Society, you have to actually understand that you have part of your fiduciary duty as a board member is to cultivate
Correct.
the legacy and the expansion of the board and the continuity of the organization, sustainability of the organization beyond you.
Beyond the founder.
And
Yes.
I hate to put it this way because we are also vested personally, emotionally into the success of these organizations, but it is beyond you. It has to be part of that culture. And some do it well,
Yes.
but in a lot of cases they don't. And, if you find the founder that founded it 50 years ago is still at the head of it.
Yes.
Is
You
it
know?
true that there's over a couple thousand registered nonprofits, 501c3s here in this county alone? People say all the time,
Oh,
how
I
many
think
are there?
it's-
More than that?
No,
It's-
I think it's upwards of in LA and or just in
Yeah.
Southern California. We're probably closer to 50.
Yeah.
50 to
Yeah.
50 to 100,000
easily.
nonprofits running around
Yeah.
saying,
I think
give
we
us your money.
I think we looked at this one time, and it was something in the range of about 25 to 27,000 in Orange County alone, or
Yes.
something like that. It was just
Wow.
like some ridiculous
Even bigger than
number,
I
yeah.
thought. So they're all, yet I can't name more than a handful of them. So they're not telling the story well. They're not creating much awareness for
Right.
their need or their cause. And if they do, I only hear from them once a year when they have an auction or a golf tournament.
So I know we're getting close to the hour here,
Yep.
Suzanne. But what
Couple minutes.
What else would you like to share relevant to your industry?
Well, I
too?
think-
you're obviously very passionate about.
I
what you do.
am, and I think one of the biggest things, and I am going to plug the National Auctioneers Association and all the auctioneers that have acquired the benefit auctioneer specialist designation.
All 200 of them.
Yes, if you are planning an event, your auctioneer, a professional benefit auctioneer, should be the first thing on your list that you should look for. We are trained specifically in helping nonprofits with benefit auctions, skilled in the psychology and the science behind best practices. People that have the National Auctioneers Association behind them have a wealth of information, networking and colleagues that at a moment's notice can help guide and
But can those
figure things out.
24,000 small charities afford you, or is this just for the Heart Fund or the Cancer Fund?
there's lots of different price points. What all of us professional benefit auctioneers like to say is if you're looking at your Excel spreadsheet on your
Your pro forma,
investments,
what are we gonna
what you
make,
have to
yeah.
pay for, your auctioneer is the only one on there that's going to make you money.
Mm-hmm.
Your florist isn't, your DJ isn't, your
Right, those
caterer
are all
isn't.
outgoing costs.
These people, this investment is really important. It's your one night in front of all these people to have your best advocate out there speaking on behalf of your organization.
Name drop a large organization.
Who've you worked with?
That
Give
you've
us some-
worked with. And I want you to do the opposite side of the scale too, because I think that will answer Paul's
Yes,
question.
right.
like, as far as
Do you just work with the Alzheimer's Foundation?
No,
or
I
whatever?
mean
Yeah.
I have worked with the Long Beach Ronald McDonald
Mm-hmm.
House, Chalk Hospital, Rady's Hospital. I'm working with Kids Singers, which is a smaller nonprofit in June. I've worked with the soccer team here in Southern
soccer
California.
team? Oh, my
gosh,
goodness.
I'm blanking out. I feel horrible.
Where located? where?
In LA, the professional soccer team.
Galaxy?
Galaxy, yes.
Yeah.
Did a golf tournament for them. Lots of different schools in Orange County and Los Angeles. So I do big,
Big and little both.
100 events to
And
80
do
people at an event.
Do you tend to look at each one of those events as its own, or is there a certain formula that's applicable to all
They're
of them?
each their own. What works for one may not work for another. A lot of people will say, can you sell this baseball? I was at an event last week and it made $5,000. Well, this is different people, different time,
Yeah.
different group. So things that may have worked well at one auction don't necessarily work for another auction. So I really pride myself in working specifically within an organization's budget also, but within, what is their community like? What is their donor base? Who's in that room? And how can we make this the most inspiring night?
Okay, so I want to end with this. What is one of the best things that you have seen work, and what is one of the worst things that you've seen not work?
Oh boy, there's but the worst ones. I bet there's some bad ones.
We'll
out
save
there.
the
Well,
name of we'll protect everybody who's
I'll
innocent or
start with
guilty.
the worst. The worst thing is having long speeches at an event, or saving your big mission moment to the end of the night after people have had 14 drinks and the sugar high is low. The best events are ones that aren't really scripted, that people speak from the heart. That's more improv.
Wow, organic and uncurated, authentic.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, I hate that.
Authentic, genuine.
We had that around here.
You know?
Hate that.
So less produced sometimes tends to just feel more real and
like
genuine.
this radio show.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate it. Let's before we go, let's give people the website again, Suzanne.
It's inspiredbenefitauctions.com.
So I mean, it's easy, right? Inspired. Okay, inspired in giving, inspiredbenefitauction.com.
Yes.
So I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's really, I think, an interesting topic, because a lot of people sometimes look at nonprofits in general and the activities of nonprofits and people that service nonprofit as being just this repetitive thing that's just always around. It's almost like, well, church, it's the same thing. You know, I go every Sunday and it's this whole routine. I think what is missed sometimes is that in a world where you have 24,000 nonprofits, where you trip over each other, where the resources are getting more finite, the pressure is on because you're all competing for resources.
Correct.
And the old favorite of mine, where people, what is it called, red ocean, where people fish in the same spot in the ocean. It may be time for you as a nonprofit to look at some blue water, some blue ocean, okay, where there is no fishing, there's no blood in the water because of all the fishing that's taking place. And you need somebody to guide you that is going to think outside the box and is going to look at what you are trying to do, who you are trying to basically connect with, and hopefully plant the seed long enough that when it actually comes time to that event, if you're working on something for a year, that when it comes time to that event, you're not struggling at the last minute to basically sell tickets. You're not struggling in the last minute to meet your expected goals. You, if hopefully can plan for this correctly, strategically, with the aid of an expert like Suzanne, you are able to achieve your goals possibly even before. Correct.
I would need divine inspiration to find such a person. I couldn't find such a person.
Inspired benefit.
There we go.
Okay.
Is that a godly enough voice for you? Inspired. Good.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Tune in next week for another episode of the Raad Life. Same time, same bat channel, Wednesday, 12 o'clock on OC Talk Radio.
You have been listening to the Raad Life Radio Show with your host and age explorer, Rad Gantos, brought to you on the one and only OCTalkRadio.net. Join us again next week as we continue our journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older.
This is CBS News on the Hour.
I'm Jim Michanovi. President Trump has declared an emergency.